I'm Selina Locke. I edited and co-published the Girly Comic for 10 years, which was an anthology of short strips which all had to have a female main character. I wanted to get lots of female creators involved in the Girly Comic, but when I first started it I didn't know many. But as we went over the 10 years, lots and lots of women creators became more visible, and lots more contributed to the Girly Comic and to lots of other comics and anthologies out there. Today we're talking about women in comics, because it's still an argument that comes up time and time again, that people don't think there are many women in comics, when there are lots of women out there if you go looking for them. So for example, earlier this year there was a big argument over the Angoulême Comics Festival in France, which is the biggest comics festival in France, and they were doing their awards for the grand prize, and they announced a long list of 30 creators that were being nominated for the prize, and all of them were men. And obviously there was a big backlash about this online and elsewhere, saying, how come in this day and age you have only got men on the list for the prize? And unfortunately Angoulême didn't help themselves much, because they put out a further statement from one of the organisers which said, when you look at the prize winners, you see that artists on it have a certain maturity and are of a certain age. Unfortunately, there are not many women in the history of comics. That's just reality. If you go to the Louvre, you will also find few feminine artists. And obviously a lot of women and other comic creators have come back and said that's just not true. It's just that people aren't looking hard enough, or trying hard enough, or thinking about it hard enough, because there are lots of women in the history of comics, and there are a huge amount of women comic creators today. So you find women comic creators who are writers, who are artists, who are complete packages in that they do the writing, the art, everything themselves. You also get women colorists, letterers, publishers, editors. So you will find women in every aspect of the comic book industry. And you can go into any comic shop, any bookstore that stocks graphic novels, and you will find work out there by women comic creators.
Now, why is there this invisibility, if we can put it that way? Why is it there?
I'm not entirely sure why it's there. I think some of it comes back to unconscious bias that you find in a lot of genres and a lot of fields of work. So things like when people are organising comic conventions, they might think about who their favourite creators are, and it might be that they just don't think about women. It might be that they're more aware of male creators, and it doesn't occur to them that they need to invite women along to the conventions, or it doesn't occur to them that women can sit on comic panels about any subject just the way that men can. Not all conventions are like this. Some of them try very hard to get a wide representation of comic creators, but other things just happen that you think, in this day and age, why is this happening? For example, there's a comic creator called Jordi Belair, who was a guest at a UK comic convention, and because she happens to be married to another comic creator, a male comic creator, they just listed her as his wife, instead of listing her as the guest she was in her own right. So I think it's just that sometimes people need to be a little more careful and think about things a little more carefully.
And if anyone wants to find out more about this, where do they go? What do you suggest?
Okay, well, if you just Google women in comics, you will find lots of articles on lots of different sites about all of the different aspects of the current debates that are going on. If you're interested in the history of women in comics, then one of the writers that does a lot about that is Trina Robbins, who has done several books, particularly about women in American comics, looking at them in history. And I think, oh yeah, there's lots of resources out there if you go looking for them.